All right, so let's get started. So I wanted to actually just off the cuff, no planning, no preparation, just have a conversation to start today's episode on something that I think is huge. I think it's massive, and that is our walking with God and the spiritual highs, the ups and downs. But really, how do I walk with God, on fire for God, on a consistent basis? Okay? So how do I walk with God, on fire for Him, on a consistent basis? Because I know for me, I do have the highs and lows.
Yeah.
I know that I've experienced more not on fire for God. That's where I want to be. That's where I want to go. And a lot of times I either feel guilty or I feel inadequate. And I don't like living there. It's actually a motivating factor for me to open up my Bible, get into worship. And the thing is, I absolutely love God's presence.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by God. I'm thankful for God. So it's not based on something that He's doing
Or even how you view him.
or how I view Him.
Yeah.
Because I think He's good and I think He's awesome. I've worked really hard to view God properly, so I don't see that as an issue, and we can go into that conversation too.
Yeah.
But what do you guys do to stay on fire for God? And I know that you guys probably have your ebbs and flows too. Let's be real here.
For sure.
Okay, so those who say that they don't have those ebbs and flows,
Yeah.
and I don't find them as so negative as I used to.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's my viewpoint now
Yeah.
at 47 years old. But when I was younger, I used to beat myself up more. I think I came even from a perspective in Christianity that if I'm not opening up my Bible consistently and regularly,
Like it's almost like a duty type.
it was a
or
duty.
chore.
It was a duty and it was a chore. And yes, it's a relationship. And yes, it should be a discipline. It should be a discipline. But I looked at it more as a chore and as a duty rather than a relationship of love.
Yeah.
And so I mixed those two and I forgot the relationship and the love. And so what do you guys think? I would love to have this conversation. So start out with you, Michael.
Okay. Yeah. Definitely. I definitely have my ebbs and flows of like highs and lows with God. But I would say just like a simple thing that I've learned is like you were saying, one, I don't really beat myself up about it. I almost think of it like my marriage. Like sometimes I'm super romantic with Hannah and I'll like remember to buy her flowers and write her notes. But then sometimes I just get busy and I just forget to do it as often. And yes, it would be nice if I did it consistently all the time, but I'm only like human. Like I'm not going to remember 24/7 everything in my life. There's just seasons. And it doesn't mean I'm, like you're saying, it doesn't mean I don't love Hannah. It just means I have seasons where I forget to be as romantic. But I would say one of the main things that I've learned in my own life that I use is actually changing what is coming into my life. So if I have like a season where I feel dull, in the Bible it says hunger begets
What do you mean
hunger.
by...
Hunger begets hunger.
Okay.
So if what I'm bringing in is just movies, sports, could be the Chiefs, even though I love the Chiefs, could be working
You
out
love the
content.
Chiefs more than Hannah?
No. Could be working out content, could be anything. It doesn't mean it's bad, but it is distracting. I'm going to increase God in what is like incoming. So what I'm watching, listening to, talking about, and then that will increase my hunger. And it kind of just becomes like a,
I actually find that it also
just follows.
it keeps the hunger going.
yeah.
I mean, I've definitely had like I probably have the most all or nothing personality there is, but like I definitely had like very intense streaks with God, and then low, and then very intense, very low.
Yeah.
And I've been on the journey to become more consistent. I think that you guys are, because I can relate to you in the way that like I'll be sitting in like a prayer meeting and I'm like, no part of it, because like when I was a kid I'd be like, dude, this is boring. You're like in church, like, this is
I just
boring.
stand for a whole hour.
I have to stand for an hour. My legs hurt.
That's actually so weird. So the standing part's like, how come when I couldn't stand for an hour?
Yeah.
But, like, now it's standing for an hour.
No,
it's
it's
so
like
easy.
I like you're sitting there like, what? Please end.
When
But
you were
like,
a kid, you couldn't stand up for an hour?
no,
Yeah.
exactly. That's what. That's what it felt like. Especially as pastors' kids, we're sitting there at the front, like we gotta stand the whole time. We look so bad if we sit down. Everyone else is standing.
This is how you thought?
Yeah, for sure. But like now,
Because everybody was watching you.
yeah,
You weren't
for
standing
sure.
on the
We're in the
front.
front.
We're in the
row.
front row, and it's like if we sit down, we're like, wait, it's just not cool.
I would look over. And
See,
I'm
if
like,
we were standing, it was
no,
also
no, it wasn't
you.
that. No,
No, it
wasn't.
was so you. I remember one time I sat down. You're like, and you just stand up, and then I was like, my legs.
No,
are...
it was not based on standing up. I'll be honest with you. My goal was always to see my kids worshiping God and to connect with God. And
It's a good intention.
yeah, good.
My legs are tired.
Good intent, but like as a kid, you're like,
I still don't care if you're standing or sitting. I care if you're engaged with God. That's really,
yeah.
that's really what I came.
Well, mainly my point was,
But you're sitting down. I'm definitely doing that because that means you're not in.
yeah. No, but when I was a kid, that's definitely happened. You'd be like, hey, bud. But the thing I'm saying, I'll sit in a prayer meeting now, and I'm not like bored or like I don't want to be there because like God's boring. Where I was a kid, I didn't like fully understand anything, and I was like, I couldn't tell if like I'm like God, like Christianity seems boring to me. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
I was a Christian, but I was trying to just like, I guess it wasn't my own yet.
Yeah.
But now I'll sit there and I'll be like, I actually like I've read the Bible, I've dived into it enough to where like I actually think this is super entertaining. Like the way that like Daniel goes to Isaiah to Revelation and they all connect, then you have like a million of these prophecies and you can actually go to them and they actually happened, and like it's like all this is so undeniable, and you sit there like this is the most insane book I've ever read. So like it's not like I'm like sitting there nowadays in a prayer meeting and he's talking about the Bible that I'm like this is so boring, but I'm like really into it, but I still have those low points, and it's now easier for me to go into it because I've dived in enough to where I find it super super interesting and engaging because it is. I heard this one guy, he's like, dude, the Bible isn't boring, you're boring. Because he was just talking about God. He's like, dude, God is limitless. Okay. There's people sitting there in heaven looking at him over and over, finding a new thing about him. Every attribute's limitless. It's crazy. So I'm like, it's not the Bible's not boring, you're boring. And I think it also ties into, sustaining hunger and keeping hunger. And I think I have to be more applicable to myself about this, is what Michael's saying. I think it's not as much about like trying hard to hunger, but it's really about putting yourself in situations to see him more, really. I think because it all comes down to what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're talking about. And I think what you're seeing, what you're hearing affects what you talk about. So the reason they do is because what you see and what you hear, what you're feeling yourself affects your heart, and the overflow of your heart, your mouth speaks.
Yeah.
So I think that all of those things that you're filling yourself with affect hunger, affect what you talk about. And also for me, especially for me, the more I talk about the Lord, the more I hunger, and it even fuels me more I talk about it.
Yeah.
And then there was that verse I remember this summer I was talking to you about it. You were like, never let the I can't quote the verse exactly, but it's like never let the word depart from your lips, basically.
Yeah.
And then I was like, it was so true because I would every time I would talk about it, it'd be like it would just fuel it so much more. I'd get so much more excited.
Well, that's hunger begets hunger.
No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's not as much my view is like this is boring when I'm on the lows, but I realize the thing that keeps me hunger is what I'm filling myself with keeps it going.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember this one trip we were taking. We were on a long drive, and we were probably somewhere in Montana. And while we were on this drive, I wanted you guys to experience. You guys were all little, and I wanted you guys to experience this buffet. Because where we lived, there was no buffet. All you can eat buffets, and it was only like $5, so really cheap. So for lunch, I'm like, guys, you can try anything you want, as much as you want, and it's gonna be $5 each. So we all went in there, and everyone's hungry, and for $5 is all you can eat, from roast to pizza to lasagna to all the desserts you wanted. And I didn't stop you. Whatever you wanted, how much you wanted, whatever you can fill yourself, was $5. So we all had a great time. And a few hours later, we're driving, and I'm like, man, I'm getting a little hungry, because I didn't go crazy. You guys went crazy. But a few hours later, I'm like, oh, we should start thinking about dinner. We're on the long road trip. And so around 5, 6 p.m., I'm like, oh, let's go to a nice steakhouse, like a really nice steakhouse. Let's go for some ribeyes. Let's go some filet mignon, like really nice ones. And so I'm telling this to Christelle to start looking. And while she's looking, I tell everyone, hey, guys, we're going to go for steak. Who wants steak? I'm trying to hype it up. Nobody wants steak. I'm like, why don't you guys want steak? Like really nice steak.
Yeah.
They're like, no, thanks. We're not hungry. What do you mean you're not hungry? It's been like 6 hours. We got to stop for dinner. We can stop at McDonald's. We want McDonald's. I'm like, no, we're not stopping at McDonald's. I want steak dinner. Something really nice. I'm trying to tell them about really nice dinner. Here's the point of the story. Hunger begets hunger, but it's really because of what I'm eating and digesting. So if I'm getting garbage, and let's just say the buffet is garbage, it's $5 all you can eat nonsense. So if I'm vegging out on video games and movies that don't do anything for my spiritual life, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just how much am I digesting? Because I'm going to want more of that. You guys wanted more McDonald's, more garbage. You didn't want the steak dinner. In fact, the steak dinner didn't even come close to you guys. Hunger begets hunger is because it's really, if I'm eating that stuff, if I'm putting that, like you're saying, so I'm kind of summarizing what I'm looking at, what I'm listening to, even what I'm talking about, the group that I'm talking with, all create hunger in me.
Yeah.
And the more I have that, the more hungry I am. So it's even like a conference. I've seen guys so many times go at a conference, and after 3 days, they're on fire. The same guy, 2-3 days later, not on fire. Why? Because for 3 days, they were just not digesting all the other
crap.
All the other crap, the buffet foods.
But they gotta like make it a lifestyle to fill themselves with those
Correct.
things. Yeah.
So sometimes it's discipline. I got to create new habits.
Yeah.
Yes.
And sometimes it's also relationships. Are these relationships really helping me engage in
Like
God
the people
more?
around you
Yes.
in your regular life.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes it might mean like, hey, let's make a decision, guys. Let's read the Bible every day for a week at 6 a.m, 7 a.m. Not something crazy, okay? Because if it's too crazy, you won't do it.
It won't last.
You won't last. Even
But
like,
for some people, that's crazy. Even 7 and 6.
even say like 7 p.m. We're just going to read the Bible. We're going to turn on the fire. We're going to read the Bible. And it's the first few days, it's not going to feel like much. But then it's going to be more. And then more. And then the conversations. And then let's throw in a podcast.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you're hungry.
But also, if you also look at the other end of it, you'll see people, if they're filling themselves with a bunch of secular music, they end up talking bad. Their friends they're hanging out with are like just absolute doo-doo influences. And they're sitting there like, why am I depressed? Because they've been sitting in their couch hanging out with bad friends, listening to depressing music and being like, why am I anxious? Why am I sad? Why do I feel lonely? That's because there's not a single thing that is filling in the choices you made, and they're just the little habits, but they ask themselves, why do I feel like this? I'm like, maybe it's because you watched that movie with that scene, and then that song with those words, and then that sleep schedule mixed with your friends are bad to talk to, and then you're like wondering why you're sitting there anxious. I'm like, I think it's also about like you'll get hunger from this end. It's kind of reaping what you sow, really.
It is.
Yeah, it's pretty.
is.
It's as basic as like you kind of get what you give.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Like I even remember you this summer. You were like calling me every other day about some Bible verse.
Yeah.
And it was because you were on a roof. You were listening to Corey Russell's podcast
Yeah.
for hours on end. And what's that going to reap? More hunger.
Yeah. And then I'll talk about it.
You talk about it.
Fuel me more.
And then it'll lead on another discussion.
And then even the people I'm talking to are more into it.
You're talking to Liz. You're talking to David. You're talking to...
But also, because now I'm one of the friends that are influencing them in a positive way. Then they're gonna be talking about it more, influence, and then it's just this. The same thing goes on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah. So if you're the most influential person around you, heck, this is gonna be good. So I say, surround yourself with the right people. Talk about that stuff. Sign as many people up to that cause that you're wanting to go, and digest the right stuff. Watch where it can go.
Yeah.
Watch where it can go.
Yeah.
So I love that stuff.
Yeah. That's great.
No, that's good.
Well, let's transition a little bit. Some crazy's been happening in LA. The fires. So I'm going to show you guys some clips. So pretty much in LA, currently they're facing devastating wildfires, which have collectively scorched over 40,000 acres and resulted in at least 24 fatalities. With thousands of people losing their homes, many are blaming Newsom and his preparation or lack thereof for the devastation that has happened. There's reports of firefighters saying they don't even have water in the fire hydrants to fight the fires. There's even a clip that I'm actually going to show you guys of Newsom being interviewed by CNN, which like is as left as can be.
Yeah.
And he's being interviewed, and the guy's like, "Hey, there's no water in these hydrants. I just talked to the firefighters." Newsom's like, "Oh yeah, that's the city's problem," and then he kind of just like pivots and keeps going. But I'm gonna show you guys a few of these clips, and then I want to get your reaction of what's going on with the LA fires.
And just to go a quarter of a mile to try to save some.
What is the situation with the water? Obviously, in Palisades, ran out last night in the hydrants. I was talking to the firefighter on this block. They left because there was no water in the hydrant here.
The local folks are trying to figure that out. I mean, just when you have a system that's not dissimilar to what we've seen in other extraordinarily large-scale fires, whether it be pipe, electricity, or whether it just be the complete overwhelm of the system. I mean, those hydrants are typical for 2 or 3 fires, maybe 1 fire. You have something at this scale, but again, that's going to be determined by the local
authorities. Were saying part of it is the gravity, that it's these giant tanks on top of the mountains.
What is most concerning to me is our first responders and our firefighters who are trying to battle this. There's no water in the Palisades. There's no water coming out of the fire hydrants. This is an absolute mismanagement by the city. It's not the firefighters' fault, but it's by the city. And I'm going to be very honest. We've got a mayor that's out of the country, and we've got a city that's burning, and there's no resources to put out fires. So if you look at your pictures, you don't see the firefighters there because there's nothing they can do. And it looks like we're in a third world country here. Mm-hmm. And we've got a lot of tough questions that we need to ask the mayor and the city council and our representatives and the county representatives. Why didn't you work to mitigate this? What was your brush mitigation program? I heard you earlier talking about it's been dry because there hasn't been rain. That's not the biggest problem here. The brush up in these hills that are controlled by the city and the county, I would bet you that if they haven't been handled, mitigated, pruned, removed for probably 30 or 40 years. This was a disaster waiting to happen. And what's predictable is preventable. And who's paying the price are all of these people in their homes and their businesses tonight. Now, we'll rebuild. But the majority of this community is going to have a tough time rebuilding their lives. And again, if you don't have water, you can't put out fires. And I'm going to spend a lot of time in the coming days and weeks and months asking some really tough questions. And I hope all of you and the press do the same and start holding our officials accountable to run the city in a way that keeps people safe.
Water. You know, in Los Angeles, you can't get proper amounts of water.
Right.
And it's unbelievably expensive. And you might have a house in Beverly Hills, and they're actually thinking about rationing water. Can you believe it?
I can believe
and
it.
I was in the farm court country with some of the congressmen. We're driving up a highway, and I say, how come all this land is so barren? It's farmland, and it looked terrible. It was just brown and bad. I said, but there's always that little corner that's so green and beautiful. They said, we have no water. I said, do you have a drought? No, we don't have a drought. I said, why do you have no water? Because the water isn't allowed to flow down. It's got a natural flow from Canada all the way up north, more water than they could ever use. And in order to protect a tiny little fish, the water up north gets routed into the Pacific Ocean. Millions and millions of gallons of water gets poured. You got to see this. We're driving up, and I had never seen it before. It's like Iowa. It's the most fertile land. Iowa is blessed with great land. Idaho for a potato, right?
Yeah.
But they're just, by the way, some land is good for a potato, some land is good for corn. It's the craziest thing. I love the farmers. They're great. They're the greatest. And by the way, they're getting killed right now.
They are.
They're getting killed because of the stupid administration. But so I see this, and I said, you got to be kidding. I said, you mean you have water? And I looked at it. It's like a valve in your sink, except it's massive. The thing's 5 times taller than your ceiling.
Did you know the center of California was a giant lake?
They have so much water.
You ever see what it looked like before
No,
they
I
rerouted
never
it?
saw that,
The
no.
center of California, like, what is it, 200 years ago? How long ago did they do that, Jamie? The center of California had a enormous lake in the middle of
So
California.
they dumped it into the Pacific.
Who knows what they did? But whatever foolishness that they did
well,
led to the situation that they're in now.
Think of those dry forests that burn down all over. The head of Austria said,
Here it is, Tulare Lake or Tachi Lake. It's a freshwater lake in the southern San Joaquin Valley, United States. Historically, Tulare Lake was one of the largest freshwater lakes west of Mississippi. Show a photo of what it looked like back then.
it's a great system.
So that's what it looked like. Look at that image. Now go to the one in the third from the right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was
wow.
Okay, so that's the clips. So I want to ask you guys, what do you think about the LA wildfires? Who's to blame, and what do you think needs to be done?
Well, I think it's terrible, horrendous, and shocking, but it was so unnecessary. This whole thing was so unnecessary for it to happen, and it's really incompetence of the governmental leaders, from Newsom to the mayor of LA. She's gone while this is happening.
She's in Ghana.
She was in Ghana. She's not needed in Ghana. She's needed in LA. So I like the way he said it. It's predictable. This was
If it's predictable, it's preventable, is what I liked what he said.
right. And so they did not prepare. I like what Donald Trump said. The water, there's plenty of resources in.
Literally beside an ocean.
Right. No, but
makes no
also
sense.
the water that's coming down from
Yeah.
the north, from Sacramento, probably from the
Canada.
hills.
It's in Canada.
And they're not making dams. They're not grabbing the water. The bush and the trees, they're not cutting them down. They're not trimming them. They're not taking care of the forests. All of this is predictable. It was preventable, and it was because of the incompetence of the government.
Yeah.
They should be resigning ASAP, especially the LA, but Newsom too.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go to another route, because these are memorable things that are. I mean, this is probably the biggest catastrophe in U.S. history. Okay, that natural disaster that's taken place. So, what would you do? Now, they've already been taxed. This state has already been overtaxed, and the properties are so expensive.
So
Whether it's rent or ownership, the mortgages are expensive. The taxes are crazy.
yeah.
So they've already had so many people leaving California. And now what are these people going to do? Here's what I predict.
Go to Texas and Florida.
They're leaving.
Yeah.
So all the money, they're going to get the insurance money, and they're leaving California.
For sure.
California just lost so much money
Yeah.
of taxes, property taxes, that they could count on. Now they can't count on them. And Newsom is actually just removing the restrictions for rebuild and all that stuff, which is nonsense. It doesn't mean anything. My memories are gone. My home is gone. My bedroom is gone. My living room is gone. Maybe my workplace. 10,000 structures are gone.
Yeah.
So what are they going to do?
Holy crap.
I guarantee you, those people, they're not so dumb. They're going to go, well, I'm going to sign up to do some again. To
Let's just live here, Dan. There's potential.
No, I don't
another
think so.
wildfire.
They've been fooled once. They've been fooled twice. This would be a third time to be fooled. I doubt that they're staying.
What do you think?
Do you think California could ever return red?
Well, now more than ever, higher chance.
There's
That's
a good,
what I'm saying. Like, could it ever?
maybe.
Well, dude, it went up this last election.
Yeah, it transitioned.
Yeah, it was more.
It was
red than ever.
trending right.
It was.
Yeah.
Ah, I see.
And now you never know. Now San Diego was always trending right.
Yeah. Because the
There
military.
was always pockets. LA was never.
Yeah.
But now, they'd be dumb to continue on in the same direction.
Yeah.
They'd be really dumb.
But we watched because I watched the video about the leaves and stuff, and how there's like laws against like going anywhere near the forest, and there's
Yeah.
a ton of leaves, and like that's really what gets the fires going.
Yeah.
And like, so they stop the water.
Like the
They
forest
have all
floor.
they have all the fuel to get this forest to go up to save this fish.
Smeat or something.
I don't know, but I'm like, it sounds pretty bad for. Oh yeah, and the money that it costs every year because to put out these fires that happen every year.
Yeah.
And he's
They
saying
just had one in November.
yeah, but it's like it's predictable.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of this crap, these leaves, this debris that's just ready to go up because it's dry and you're stopping the water and you're not allowed to go near it. I don't know. You can't give me an environmental argument to save this fish. Like, you really can't. Like, I'm like, even if you were like one of the
fires destroy the environment.
that's what I'm
completely.
saying. So I'm like, I'm not saying taking care of the environment's bad, but there's a lot of this dumb environmental crap. That I'm
Well,
like,
it's not just on the environmental crap. If you guys really dig into the incompetency of these leaders, you'll also hear about the fire department.
oh my gosh,
The fire department has been hiring people that are I think it's called DEI.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Diverse.
Diversity Exclusion Index.
Yes, that's what they've been hiring. So they have more, lesbian women in the fire department in charge.
So lesbian black woman is like their favorite.
Right.
That's so like DEI is hiring someone that they think is a minority.
Right.
Yep.
Instead of a typical white male who would be a firefighter.
Or like
hire a female.
or like the best firefighter for the job.
I don't really care if it's a girl or a guy. Are they better?
Whoever's better.
Who's the best?
Yeah.
That's who should be taking care of this stuff.
Yeah.
Not just because they're a lesbian or because of their skin color.
Oh, we even watched the clip of that guy that he didn't get. He like applied
For 7 years.
and he
7
it
years?
took-
7 years.
and then he's in line after 7 years. He goes again, and then he's like, "How long did it take you
To a black woman.
Yeah, to a black woman. How long did it take you to apply?" And then she's like, "Wednesday," and he was like,
And it took him
Dude.
7 years.
He said, "Come back in 7 years," and the dude came back 7 years later, and there's a chick that was just your Wednesday. That's insane.
This is how incompetent these people are. They're hiring for the wrong reasons. They're not taking care of the water. They're not taking care of the forest. That's why they got this problem. They should be fired right on the spot.
Oh, yeah.
And they should be hiring the right people. But this is actually the people in California who put these people in power.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's
if
actually
you-
not just Newsom. It's California.
Well, even if you think of Newsom, like if you just look at straight budget, like the dude just spent what, like 50 million trying to sue Trump to get rid of the laws that he's going to implement when he gets in power, because they're trying to like protect what they've already been doing in the past while. But then also the mayor of LA, she cut 23 million from the budget for firefighter equipment.
that real?
Wow.
Last in April.
Wow.
In literally April.
She should be fired too. Right now. All these people.
Like, this is like a Trump Trudeau situation where Trump's like, Trudeau sucks. Like, we just got to get rid of this guy. It's got to be the same type of thing.
It's gotta
Send
be.
it, get Newsom out.
Yeah, get Newsom out. And honestly, I actually saw a tweet from Trump. I think it was like when he was doing his campaign in October or September. He was talking about how Newsom's done such a bad job cleaning the forest floor, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And that's why it's just so easy for them to always have fires. Like, they literally had a fire in November. It wasn't this big.
Because they have laws restricting them from going into
clean
and
the
touching
forest
the
floor.
forest at all.
Yes. Because it's an environmental law. But
But you're
literally
cooking
that.
the environment with some
But
flames.
then they don't understand. It's like, if you give people more water, there's more agriculture, which creates a better environment, which also brings more money to your state. And then you don't have to charge people $1 million in property tax.
Freaking good point.
It's called dumb.
Yeah, it's literally it. So these guys should definitely get kicked out. Got to get rid of Newsom. Got to get rid of the mayor who's in Ghana. Makes no sense.
And then, dude, let freaking California go red, dude.
Make
California great again. Yes, dude.
But yeah. Well, let's transition a little bit to our next topic. Weed versus alcohol. This is an interesting one. So I've heard this one from mostly younger Christian guys have like asked this, where it's like, hey, I know it's a sin to get drunk. I know that I probably shouldn't drink,
But it's not sin to drink.
and it's not a sin to drink. But what about weed? Like, the Bible doesn't seem to say anything about weed. And there's not a specific thing that I can point to where it says like, don't get drunk. But I want to ask you guys, what do you think weed versus alcohol can Christians consume or take part in weed?
Okay, well, I'll start with first thing we talked about last time we talked about alcohol was sober mind.
Yeah.
Okay, you're still not of sober mind if you are high. Okay, that's just what being high is.
Yes.
Okay, like you can't argue with that.
Yeah.
That's like the actual definition of not a sober mind. But I would say, are we so the argument, are we talking about like it's
Weed
again
versus alcohol.
as like what's worse?
No. Like why can't I have alcohol, but the Bible doesn't say anything about weed?
Yeah, I guess people weren't getting high back then. I mean, but I've thought about this a little bit. I would probably say, like, I've thought about like what's worse. Honestly, my opinion is I think actually weed is less bad than alcohol. I think you could
Like you're
I
talking
think
physically.
like getting high on weed and then getting drunk on alcohol. I think it's definitely worse. It's worse driving. It's worse for your health. It's worse. I think it's worse.
Well, they
in so
did
many
test
ways.
on rats. Rats can die from alcohol. We can die from alcohol.
Yeah.
But rats will never die off weed.
No.
So it's, just
So why can't I have it?
Well, it's not about, there's a great Bible verse it's in 1 Corinthians that says, everything's permissible, but not everything's beneficial.
Okay.
So it's lawful for you to do weed,
Yeah.
but is it beneficial? So that's one question.
Mm-hmm.
And is it
You're not sober minded. You could say that one again.
sober-minded?
Yep, I could say that one.
But okay, so these two things, alcohol and weed, actually alters the state of your mind.
Yes.
Okay, that's the bottom line here. So sober mind does come into play here. But I would also say, why do you need an altered state?
Yeah.
So alcohol will definitely mess with your body. It will definitely hurt you long term. It's poison actually in your physical body and your organs. But you're in an altered state, so you can't drive with it.
Yeah.
You can't, you can't consume a whole bunch of it. It's against the word to get drunk on it. Weed, it's why do you need to be in an altered state? I remember the first time I was like 15 years old that a friend of mine who loved tobacco, chewing tobacco, he was always had something in his, in his chin,
Yeah.
in his gums. And I remember he talked me into it. We were, shooting some guns in the middle of nowhere in Wisconsin. And he talked me into taking some chewing tobacco. And we were right by his truck. So he did that. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I thought the whole thing was cool.
So manly.
Yeah. This is
So
cool.
manly. What a-
And all of a sudden,
I wanna get this
this
guy.
is what you do. You put it in there. So I put it in there. And within 2-3 minutes, I'm like getting like, I feel like I'm sweating. I feel like I'm having a fever. And I'm definitely in an altered state. I feel like I'm going to throw up. I'm like, dude, Aaron, I feel like crap. This is terrible. Why would you keep doing this? After 3 minutes of this thing in me, I'm throwing it out. And for 2 hours, I was laying in this truck. That's how sick I felt. Okay. And there he goes, shoots guns. And I did not get to enjoy shooting guns at all because I'm sick in his truck. Okay. I realized I never want to shoot again. I think weed is an open door. Here's my perspective on it. I think it's an open door to many other drugs. Yeah. It's a gateway drug. Now, people can argue with me, and
It's not addictive.
it's not addictive.
I'm like,
yeah, it may not be addictive.
Okay, this is my thing.
Neither is melatonin.
I think almost I think almost everything can be addictive.
Yeah.
I don't care what someone says when they're like, weed's not addictive. I was like, dude,
Then
have you
stop.
seen this show, Strange and Weird Addictions? Dude, there's a guy that gets addicted to eating rocks. Okay, someone can get addicted to a high. Okay, I don't care what you say.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, it's illogical to say you can't get addicted off of weed. But I've also seen a lot of even friends from when we were in Canada. They started with weed, but now they're like heavy partiers and they're doing crack and all this other crap.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bro, just why?
Why do you need to be in an altered state?
The why altered state
Yeah,
also, because you can
why?
sit there and be like, what is so bad about my life? I'd rather attack.
Why?
I'd be smarter
Yes.
attack that than rather be like, weed is the
I
answer.
also see that people who are doing weed, they tend to isolate it. Because I've had a lot of buddies
Yeah.
who did this.
Yeah.
And they would tend to isolate. They would leave community. They leave their friendships. They're all by themselves smoking weed.
Yeah.
Okay? And so, number one, their altered state is isolating them from people, from their friends, from
Which
their
is
family,
Satan's goal.
which is not good. Okay. And then the second thing that's happening to them, they're needing to leave the reality of their life. Why is their reality in their life so bad that they need to actually leave it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
These two ideas, something's wrong. So you should ask the question, why do I need an altered state from leaving reality and leaving community?
Yeah.
You should be asking those two questions. So when it comes to weed versus alcohol, I think alcohol is worse
Yeah.
because it hurts your body. It hurts people around you
You're talking physically.
physically.
You could bring a Bible verse about damaging yourself physically, and then you could talk about
Yes.
the Bible verse on alcohol.
Well, it
then you
does.
talk
I mean,
about-
people
yeah.
die in alcohol all the time.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to a police officer friend of mine who said, did you know that alcohol is in 99% of the crimes done?
Wow.
It's always on the counter, he said. Always on the counter. So when he told me that, I was shocked. Like, yeah, it's true. If I look at my own life, most of the time that I did something really terrible, alcohol was around it. So I say, not only is it a comparison between the two, I say run away from these two things.
Yeah.
They should not be a part of your life, because altering your state of mind, to not be sober of mind, to not be alert, to not be awake,
Yeah.
something else is going on, and I should be looking at
Yeah,
that.
but I also think if you're sitting there like listening to this podcast, you're like, oh, I really want to know the answer to this question about alcohol. I'm really into that, and you're sitting there like, what? It almost is like this attitude of like I'm trying to edge the line
Right.
of like what's right and wrong.
Yeah.
I'm like, you should be staying as far away as possible from weed and alcohol. That it's like you wouldn't even like you shouldn't even be like
It's almost-
teetering it with the thought.
Yeah, it's almost like the discussion that I've heard many times where masturbation's not wrong.
It doesn't say
It
masturbation.
doesn't say masturbation in the Bible, but just porn. But porn and pornography go hand together. Love and marriage, So I just don't understand this whole concept that I have to try to flirt with it.
No,
I want-
it's literally like edging the line for bad
Yes.
things. I'm like, if you're sitting there, I'm like, you're telling me, I was like, bro, you're gonna masturbate without anything in front of you. You're lying, dude. You're lying. I'm like, that's so dumb.
But again, back to these two things. I think run away as fast as possibly can. That would be. I mean, that's
No,
my take.
that's what I think.
So, for
Yeah, I agree.
That's the bottom line.
100%.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are all good. I like it. Well, we got another current event happening. So Joe Rogan. Is Joe Rogan turning to Christianity? So recently this one popped up on my Twitter thread, or X, whatever it's called now. By the way, Elon's a bad name. It looks cool, but it's a bad name.
It looks cool, but it's a bad name.
What's a
I don't-
bad name?
X.
X.
Oh,
He should not
Just
call it
call
X.
it
Just
Twitter
call it
X.
Twitter. Yeah, Twitter X is actually a better name.
Twitter X sounds way better.
Way better.
But anyways, so Joe Rogan, he's obviously a lot of people know him, podcaster. He's been doing it since 2013. He has about 5.73 billion viewers since 2013.
Wow.
So he's a huge platform. But recently,
And that's probably only on one platform.
that might only be
Wait, are you saying views?
yeah, viewers. 5.7
Viewers or views?
Subscribers.
says 5.73 billion views.
Views.
wow.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Subscribers, no.
Because
That'd
I'm
be
like, I
insane.
doubt
That's the
that.
whole
I doubt that's like almost the entire world.
Well, dude, the whole world's 8 billion, and he has almost 6.
He's got a lot of people watching.
A lot of people watching. But anyways, this is his. Make sure you guys can still hear us. This is the Twitter thread that I was looking at. So shout out to Jake Rattlesnake for making the thread. This is pretty much showing all the clips through the years of Joe Rogan, how he's changed his tune to Christianity. So here's one.
And if they didn't have the unit to explain them, and that could get so tiresome. It would get so tiresome to sit around with some blundering moron, pontificating on what it means to have a finite life in an infinite universe, and what part of this part of this experience you really do play. What part do you play, and what is your consciousness all about, and why are you so scared of it shutting off? Those are scary, terrifying questions for the average person. And, maybe some ditch digger dude doesn't need to know that. Maybe there's some dudes who have I believe there's people that have brains that work way better than mine. I've seen it. I've talked to people that I know. It's not just a matter of education. It's a matter
Okay, so this next clip, he's literally cooking a Christian guy. Like, he is roasting him.
Be better than you are doesn't mean you believe in Jewish zombies.
I'm not going to win this one. I'm not going to win this one.
Well, of course you're not. This one's ridiculous. This one's ridiculous. You're talking about written on animal skins by people who thought the world was flat and the sun was 17 miles away. And you're like, oh, yeah, that's going to make you a better person. It's totally, yeah, they found it in clay pots in Qumran. Yeah, they unscrolled, they had to do DNA tests to find out which piece of this piece was written on.
I feel sorry for people who have a sort of bleak, empty existence of
Oh,
militant
that's not
atheism.
bleak or empty.
It's just so boring.
A lack of belief in nonsense is not
Terrible way
bleak.
to look at the world.
A lack of belief in nonsense is not bleak. What other ridiculous do I believe? That's akin to Jewish zombies or guys who turn
God's sake,
wine and
stop it.
out of
It's
water.
nothing, you know what? There's nothing more depressing than seeing somebody who you admire, who's obviously smart and clever,
who won't
and
buy
interesting.
into old fairy tales.
No, just
God damn it.
Just
rolls on, people are going to understand the need to have some sort of divine structure to things, some sort of belief in the sanctity of love and of truth. And a lot of that comes from religion. A lot of people's moral compass and the guidelines that they've used to follow to live a just and righteous life has come from religion. And
And actually, this one, I think Jordan Peterson coming on was one of the main, like, transition points where, like, he's like, oh, this guy's actually smart. And he, like, is kind of convincing me of, like, the Bible's real.
In a civilization, you say, which are the fundamental texts? And the answer is the texts upon which most other texts depend. And so you put Shakespeare way in there in English because so many texts are dependent on Shakespeare's literary revelations. And Milton would be in that category.
To that, it seems like more bigger name folks are becoming Christian, or to some degree, like Candace Owens and Rod Schneider, Your Bride.
Yeah. Ian Hersey Ali,
Yeah.
Neil Ferguson, Russell Brand, Joe Rogan, Douglas
Joe
Murray.
Rogan. What are you doing with Joe Rogan?
Well, Joe's already, he's got a foot in
certainly,
the camp.
he's a lot less disparaging of Christianity than he once was, which we all really appreciate. Thank you,
well,
Joe.
Joe figured it out. Yeah.
I saw this one.
go back in time once and survive and come back to the future, where would you go?
Jesus.
Jesus. What if there was nobody there?
Be even better. I get
What
them
if
all to
you-
myself, just me and Jesus.
No, I mean, what if Jesus wasn't there? What if you go back and you're like, I just want to go see Jesus? And you're like, okay, what time?
He'd be there. He'd probably like a DJ back then, cutting his up. He's there.
Do you think there's a real Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Absolutely. 1000%. Want to be
What makes you convinced?
my faith.
I mean, that's a good answer. I always wonder when people are telling stories, though. Like, how long did that story take before people wrote it down? How many times did people alter it? Just like they do with everything today. I got to imagine that at a certain point in time in history, they probably didn't tell the truth about a lot of things. And we take those things, tell them through oral traditions, have them written.
Okay, so this next part, it's actually crazy because there's a guy named Wes Huff, and he's been blowing up in the past like 3 or 4 months because he had this big kind of argument and debate with a famous atheist argument debater guy, Billy Carson. And so he actually went on Joe Rogan this last week. It just released, and it's like crazy because the guy Wes Huff, he's like a crazy scholar dude. Like the dude's a genius. Like he studied like all the original manuscripts of the Bible. He's read the Quran 3 times through. Like it's just what this guy does. And so he actually just went on Joe Rogan, and I want to show you guys it. So he's talking about the resurrection of Jesus, which is so interesting.
Like they're like, he's dead. We're done.
Yeah.
And then they go from 11, scared men, because Judas commits suicide, scared men in an upper room to completely overhauling the Roman world in only a couple hundred years because of this claim that they say they saw Jesus resurrected. Like there's something different that goes on there that they're like, this is a miracle, right? Dead people don't usually rise from the dead.
So what is your personal belief when it comes to the resurrection? What do you think happened? Do you have a belief, or do you just try to interpret the text and try to see what is the message?
Well, I think, so as a historian, I do think it is a historical question. You have a guy who objectively lived, he objectively died, and then individuals close to his inner circle claim that they see him not dead.
Right.
Again.
This is a highly unusual activity.
Highly unusual.
Right. So, but it's hard when you're dealing with illiterate populations, you're dealing with thousands of years of time, you're dealing with an oral tradition, and then you have us sitting here talking about it in 2024, trying to figure it at the end of 2024, trying to figure this out, literally the end, last couple of days. It's very difficult for anybody who thinks of themselves as an intelligent person who's secular to even entertain the possibility that someone died and come back to life.
And I get that. But we've already talked about the fact that we don't think that the only thing that exists is matter and motion. We as in you and I, right? Like, we believe that there's something else going on in this world that's a little bit crazy.
There's something else.
And that, to, I think, exclude that, I think excludes something that you're kind of putting blinders on for. And you do have, I mean, you're right in terms of all of these ancient conventions and the ways that things were spread around. But the Gospels are written in the lifetime of the eyewitnesses. And they're written in this period of time where you have groups of individuals who could have fact-checked those things. So,
how do you fact check someone coming back from the dead?
Well, how
many people saw his body, right?
Well, Paul says that 400 people saw him all at once.
400 people saw the crucifixion?
No, saw the resurrected Jesus. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 15. Paul says that Jesus appeared to the disciples, and then he appeared to 400 people all at once. I mean, if we read the Gospel of Luke and the Gospel of Luke and Acts, so same author wrote these both documents, he says that Jesus was walking around teaching them for 40 days after he was resurrected from the dead. And so these are written within a time period when you have people who would have seen Jesus' ministry, who were there, say, at something like the feeding of the 5,000, who could have been able to verify or debunk some of these things that are being said. And you go from a bunch of scared guys who, because Jesus wasn't the only messianic figure who arose and claimed to be the Messiah.
Right.
There were a number of individuals both prior to and after Jesus, but they die and the movement dies with them.
Do you think it's possible that he didn't die? And do you think it's possible that they thought he was dead? Because that does happen. There was actually a case very recently where a guy was about to be harvested for organs. They thought he was dead, and this guy started moving again and came back to life. It's a very, very bizarre case because his family had been told that he was going to be harvested for organs. They were preparing for that.
Yeah.
This guy comes back.
Yeah, I mean, we know a lot about Roman crucifixion. And we know that, and we know that they did their job well.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, if you look at, say, very skeptical biblical scholars, like non-believing, atheist, agnostic Christian scholars, they will say if we can know anything about Jesus, like they'll cast it down on a lot of the things that we read about in the Gospels in terms of the actual historical Jesus of Nazareth. They'll say one thing we can be sure of is that he died by crucifixion under Pontius Pilate. Because we have not just multiple attested documents that we refer to as the New Testament, but Roman and Greek and Jewish writers refer to that claim afterwards and talk about the fact that you have this guy, and it's mocked within earliest Christianity. So one of our earliest, in fact, not one of, the earliest depiction of Jesus on the cross is called the Alexamenos Graphido.
Okay, so that's the clip.
Dang.
So what do you guys think? Is Joe Rogan turning to Christianity? Obviously, we saw like the beginning clips where he's like cussing, calling Christians morons, and like there's way
saying
more.
Jesus was a Jewish mummy,
Jewish
zombie or whatever.
What do you guys think?
So my answer is absolutely yes.
I think he's going to be a Christian. I just think it's because Joe Rogan has such a personality where he's really in every conversation. I think it's the reason why people like listening to him so much.
He's kind of in the middle.
Is because yes, but it's also because he's always asking questions,
He's
searching
seeking-
for truth.
Yeah, he's seeking truth.
What is the truth on this topic? And he will go on it forever. And I think because he does that so well, I think he's eventually going to come to the point, especially with smart people talking to him like Jordan Peterson and this dude. Especially, I would love to get Cliff Neckel on there.
Yeah,
that would be fun.
That'd be a good one. But here's the thing that my take on Joe Rogan. I think Joe Rogan, yes, he's seeking truth. I see him as doubting Thomas in the Bible. Okay? He's a depiction of that. You know, here's the resurrected Christ in the last, chapter.
Very skeptical.
The last chapter of the book of John. And Jesus comes and he shows himself and they're all afraid.
Yeah.
And to the first person that Jesus shows himself to is Doubting Thomas. I mean, I call him Doubting Thomas.
Yeah.
He's like, show me the nails. Let me see. And he sees through the nails.
Yeah.
That's what Joe Rogan is doing. Show me the nails. Could he have, made up that he was resurrected? Really? You're doubting that he resurrected? Have you doubted that we're sitting here on earth and the world is going around? Think about this, okay, guys? We're sitting still right now. But the world, the earth is going 66,000 miles an hour. And we don't feel that.
Yeah.
And there's no God.
Yeah.
We're much more than just...
I don't even know how they comprehend a universe that's never stops growing.
Right.
No, I actually.
How do you comprehend that without
heard
thinking
in this
there's a
interview,
God?
Wes said people they don't believe in a virgin birth, like
But
the
they-
Mary were, but they
right.
believe in a
virgin
virgin
universe.
And then you could see Joe Rogan and like kind of clicked in his head. He's like, oh shoot.
Yeah.
Like that makes sense.
Yeah, and people talk about the universe all the time. Maybe the universe is talking. Yeah. What? It's not a lot. What? God made the universe. Yeah. God made that. And, I got to go back to something so simple. My Zion, he's 5 years old. And yesterday, he's wearing this outfit.
Yeah.
The Superman outfit. It's all fake with fake muscles. And he jumps on the bed and he starts just strutting. Look at my muscles. And he actually believes it. He believes it. His imagination is there. And God says, come to me like a little child. Because it's actually so childish to believe in God. And God is inviting us to not look at all these questions. And I appreciate this video. I appreciate Wes. I would love to talk to him because it's so amazing. But God is still inviting us to believe in like a childlike faith.
Well, almost like the Kid Rock clip where he's like, so why do you think Jesus is there? He's like, my faith.
Yeah.
And then Joe's like, it's actually a pretty good answer.
It takes faith to
Yeah.
believe in this.
Yeah.
But it takes faith to get in a car and drive. It takes faith to think about this. Every single morning the sun rises and every single night the sun comes up.
Sometimes.
The sunset. No, the moon comes up.
Yeah, yeah.
The moon comes up and the sun rises every single day. And I can take it by faith that it's going to happen tomorrow. And it's going to happen the next day after that. And I have to believe. And I believe that in the book of Romans chapter 1, that God created creation for the very purpose to showing who he is already. So we don't need much more proof beyond the trees and the leaves and the flowers.
Not at all. Like you're sitting there and like you're just looking at rain. The rain comes down. It helps all these flowers and these plants, and then the animals eat the plants, and then they're fed, and then we kill the animals and eat the plants, so we're fed, and then they drop an egg, we eat the egg, and then there's a bird. It's like, dude, the amount of cycles that are so specific.
Right.
There's no way you could actually sit there and be like, there's so much order in the way that everything is designed, and it works so well, and it's so like,
and it's so intricate and it's so amazing.
You're telling me we're sitting there and you're telling me, oh, where do we get oxygen from? Oh, it comes from trees. There's tons of these trees that are just oxygen coming through, and you're just like,
no. But the most glorious thing that I can think of is a baby being born.
Yeah,
like being in the birthing room, okay, at a hospital. And my wife is delivering a baby. And I'm like, whoa, that's a human being that just came out of you that I supposedly had some part to.
You're just the dough.
Yes.
Dough in the oven.
But I'm like, it's so beautiful. How could this be? God.
there's so much order.
This is God.
It's crazy. You're telling me this little liquid into this woman makes this child, and then that child produces liquid in like 20-something years, and then he has a child. Dude, what are you
And they kind of look like you, and they kind of talk like you, and there's some DNA thing. Come on, this is too good. I believe in God based on what I've already seen. I don't need much.
But I like the way that is it Neckel? What is it? His last name?
Cliff Nettle, I think.
Cliff Nettle, whatever. The way he says it is he's like, I've never seen life come from non-life before.
Right.
Like he's like, you can't find it ever. You're not a plant, not a human, not an animal. You can't find a single thing where life comes from non-life ever.
It's true.
So
I say Joe Rogan, keep seeking, keep doubting, because eventually you're going to find.
You're
the
gonna
truth.
find out
Yeah.
that his word will not return void.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's all we got for you today, guys. Please like and subscribe. Share this with someone that might find it interesting. And you guys have a good rest of your day. See you later.